I remember the day Seth left the world to die. I remember the voices of our brothers, of those he left behind to die with it. I remember the day Seth proclaimed our lives worth less than the planet of the Legion that shunned us. I remember that day. It was the first day I believed him to have the strength to save us. The Adeptus Astartes bestow the Emperor's judgment upon the wicked of the galaxy. Imbued with the heritage of the sons of the Master of Mankind, each chapter is led by noble, savage, and cunning masters to best harness their specific talents in the art of war. Yet among such chapter masters, some have earned a reputation among their peers, worthy of legend and infamy. For today, we shall elucidate a chapter master known for his brash and brutal warrior spirit. The guardian of rage of the Flesh Tearers chapter, GABRIEL SETH. The origins of GABRIEL SETH have been lost to time. For what is there to tell for a warrior revered for the arts of slaughter, but the rending of his foes into ribbons? Appointed as chapter master during 815.M41, Seth has served as the leader of the Flesh Tearers for over a century and would mark his ascension with the renewal of his chapter. Their bonds of fraternity between their primogenitor chapter, the Blood Angels, had always been fractious due to the Flesh Tearers' tendencies to succumb to their barbaric nature. The founder of the chapter, Nassir Amit, had garnered a legend as a warrior sanguineous, possessing an impertinent yet capable warrior spirit. Even during the days of the Great Crusade, the legacy of the Flesh Tearer of the Ninth would be of ill repute in the eyes of his austere peers. Following in their benefactor's image, the Flesh Tearers would not hide nor conceal their inner bloodlust, nor shy away from their bloodline's inevitable curse to surrender to madness. Seeking an audience with the chapter master of the Blood Angels, Dante, upon his homeworld of Baal, GABRIEL SETH would vow to the Lord of Angels to collar his chapter's violent impulses and relentless slaughter. Pledging to renew the honor of his chapter in the memory of their shared primarch, Sanguinius, Gabriel would return to his kin, dedicated to save his brothers from annihilation. Yet upon his return, the sanguinary priests of the Flesh Tearers would reveal the true cost of their chapter's curse. Rapidly declining in number due to their rampant overwhelming by their blood curse, they would be unable to replenish their losses should such instances continue at such a staggering rate. Projecting their chapter's extinction within 2 Terran centuries, no salvation would be found outside the confines of their own ranks, and not even the great angel's divine grace could stave off such a catastrophic degradation. Resolving that should his chapter fall, they shall do so remembered as proud sons of Sanguinius, not the mindless butchers that the Imperium currently ordained them to be. Announcing to his men their new purpose, Seth decreed that they shall not be inscribed into history as the feral killers of nightmares, but the glorious, cursed and bloody martyrs of the Adeptus Astartes. Tasking his chapter to absolve themselves of their past sins through deeds, the Flesh Tearers would patrol the most benighted sectors of the galaxy, seeking out the most terrible and malevolent foes to slay. Responding to distress signals, calling for aid as their first responders, the Flesh Tearers thereafter led the vanguard of defenses against the wicked upon besieged worlds. Answering calls for aid from the mortal defenders of the Imperium, the Flesh Tearers would descend upon the invading forces of Xenos, mutants and heretics, foolish enough to challenge the forces of humanity. Acutely aware of the weight of the shame of their past actions, their battles to protect the innocent and beleaguered subjects of the Imperium provide glimmers of redemption in the eyes of the terrified mortals who look upon them. Transforming the chapter's homeworld of Cretacia into a gigantic armory replete with automated armament factories and recruitment centers, the Flesh Tearers rarely return to their base of operations due to their countless patrols and campaigns across the Segmentum Ultima and Tempestus. Each librarian of the chapter combs through astropathic messages projected through the ether for cries for salvation, as the flesh tearers have become adept at swiftly answering such calls for reinforcements. Among the first waves of counterattacks, the sight of the flesh tearers led by their imposing leader at the forefront of battle is a gruesome sight for both their enemies and allies alike. Clad in his ornate artificer armor, draped in the cloak known as the Blood Mantle, this artifact of the chapter is said to be cut from the banner carried into battle by their forebear, Nassir Amit. Protected by the sacred halo of thorns and wielding the immense two-handed eviscerator chainsword, the Blood Reaver, Seth's unsubtle yet immense martial skill rends his enemies to shreds, no matter the thickness of their armor. Said to be forged with the teeth of the chain fists once wielded by Nassir Amit, the Blood Reaver hungers for viscera as the mechanical roar of its engine rallies the flesh tearers to fight at the side of their savage master. Proving deadly during boarding actions against enemy blockades and drop pod assaults within the heart of their foes, there are no Astartes better suited to close quarters combat, unrestrained by mercy or restraint. Aware that he is unable to fully curtail his battle brother's impulses completely, Gabriel Seth deploys his forces far from allied positions to prevent fatalities incurred from his fallen kin. Containing the collateral damage of each Astartes consumed by the Black Rage within their ranks, despite their dire circumstance and proclivity to cull their own men, the flesh tearers have finally earned a reputation as saviors of the downtrodden. After over a century of service, Gabriel Seth has managed to redeem his chapter in the eyes of the mortals of the Imperium, yet much work remains to be done in repairing their ties to their allied Astartes peers. In spite of his tireless efforts to redeem his chapter in the eyes of humanity, many detractors still revile and disparage the deeds of Gabriel Seth. Mistrusted by other chapter masters of the Adeptus Astartes, Gabriel does not waste his valuable time attempting to soften his image nor his nature. Righteous in his quest to cleanse his chapter of their past sins, Seth bears the weight of among the heaviest burdens for any soul to carry. Yet among all the chapters of the Imperium, Gabriel Seth harbors a unique disdain for his noble counterparts, the Blood Angels. Aiding the relief efforts of the librarian world of Hammenlina, Gabriel Seth would fight the forces of chaos seeking to claim knowledge from the archives of the planet alongside the Blood Angels. The High Chaplain of the Blood, Astartes the Grim, sensing the presence of survivors of the carnage of battle caused by the Flesh Tearers' Death Company, had descended to cull the Astartes, now fully surrendered to the Black Rage. Suffering the curse himself whilst attending to his duties, Astartes took to the field, wielding his executioner's axe, and once finished slaying the Flesh Tearers, recorded their names upon the parchment affixed to his armor. Piling their bodies and burning their remains with a melter charge, their deeds and names would be rescinded from the Hall of Heroes of the Blood Angels' records, their deeds confined to Astartes' memory. Confronting Astartes within the Reclusium of Baal, Gabriel Seth warned the High Chaplain that he shall not harm another flesh tearer while Seth drew breath. Cracking Astartes' calm demeanor by observing his own hidden shame of succumbing to his inner demons, Gabriel reminded Astartes that neither of them were above the surrender to madness. Claiming his actions vindicated as necessary to protect the bloodline of Sanguinius, Astartes' excuses meant little to Gabriel at the High Chaplain's weakness. Striking Astartes in the chest, Gabriel Seth would pummel the Redeemer of the Lost as the two began to brawl. Fitted with a jump pack, Astartes would gain the upper hand, and after smashing Seth's head into the ground, warn him that he could not best him in combat, for after all, Gabriel knew in his heart that Astartes was correct in his assertion. Yet Gabriel's intent was of one purpose. The longer he could stall the Reaper of the Lost, the more time he could give his battle brothers a reprieve from the High Chaplain's butchery. Damaging Astartes' jump pack with his fists, Seth would grapple his opponent off the precipice of the platform from which they stood and crash onto the earth below. Restating his commination once more, Gabriel Seth would swear that he would return should Astartes transgress in his eyes again. And should he return, he would not do so alone. During 998.M41, a war of immense scale had erupted. The largest greenskin invasion ever recorded by the Imperium, in excess of even the Ulanor Crusade, had begun its rampage across the stars. Gazgul Mag Uruk Fraka, at the head of his gargantuan orc war, had launched an assault upon the invaluable hive world of Armageddon. Beginning the infamous Third War for Armageddon, millions of mortal soldiers and dozens of Astartes chapters would be dispatched to face the orc menace. Deploying 5 full companies of the Flesh Terrors, Gabriel Seth would lead the charge in the desperate conflict to preserve one of the few bastions of the Imperium's war effort. However, due to the protracted and prolonged campaign, the Flesh Terrors' rage would not be contained. Devastating the ranks of both Orc and Imperial forces within their proximity, the black rage of the Flesh Terrors had seen to the massacre of their own allies. Coming close to being declared excommunicate traitoris by the Emperor's Holy Inquisition, the chapter had also been attributed the foul title of Eaters of the Dead by the Xenos for their actions during the war. Causing the Greenskins to retreat at the mere sight of their visage, the Flesh Terrors had displayed such incredible savagery in battle that even the Xenos had become fearful of their presence. Fighting alongside the sororitas Order of the Argent Shroud, the Flesh Terrors had managed to slay the Orc warlord, Ruklam, by pinning their forces between their combined might. Consumed fully by their rage, after slaughtering the Orcs, the Flesh Terrors began killing their militia allies until none survived. The Order of the Argent Shroud withdrew from the battle to prevent their own losses and reported the actions of the chapter to the Ordo Hereticus, recommending their expulsion from service to the Adeptus Astartes. Summoned to the Arx Angelicum Fortress Monastery of the World of Baal by Lord Commander Dante, Gabriel Seth would be judged by the Trial of Blood. An assemblage of chapter masters of each Blood Angel Successor Chapter presided over the trial as Seth defended the Flesh Terror's actions. Finding no allies among the judges of his kin, Gabriel announced to the Forum Judicium that he had come to make a sacrifice. Should they choose to remove his name from the records of their bloodline, so be it, but they shall not enact censure of his chapter. Informing Gabriel that he was in no position to make demands, Dante and the Castellan of the Angels in Carmine, Zargo, demanded accountability for his actions. Promising to continue fighting in the name of the Emperor and their Primarch, whatever the outcome of his trial may be, Seth warned the assembly that they may do what they will of him, but should they harm his kin, Gabriel would kill each and every one of them. Further detailing that once they were dead, he would tear out their eyes and drink their blood dry, the indignation of Seth's threats causing his detractors to bristle. Chapter Master Geron of the Angels Numinous decried that Seth had drawn scrutiny upon all chapters of the Blood, with Chapter Master Orlok of the Blood Drinkers agreeing with his assessment. The Chronicler of the Assembly, Chapter Master of the Disciples of Blood, Tekiel, recounted the charges set against Gabriel until citing the events of the Stormark Civil War of 991.M41. Already involving the Angels in Carmine during the conflict, with the intervention of the Flesh Terrors, combat had swiftly drawn to a halt. More direct in their methods than their peers, the Flesh Terrors had proven to be an effective force, yet at the cost of millions of needless casualties. Stating that such losses were necessary to bring the conflict to an end, another incident of infighting between the Flesh Terrors and Space Wolves during the Battle of Honor's End during 837.M41 further cemented the disdain of his judges. Retorting that all chapters of the Blood carried the burden of their curse, Seth stated that such a weight was not carried equally by each chapter. Citing the Exsanguinators' similarity in their degree of losses to the Flesh Terrors in succumbing to their rage, Gabriel argued that perhaps Chapter Master Malthus, under similar circumstances, would stand in his place. Reminding his accusers that the ruinous powers still held sway over the galaxy and that their work as the Emperor's angels remained unfinished, Seth believed that their only purpose was to slay the archenemy, no matter the cost or sacrifice, despite their own inner battles being inevitably unwinnable. Bearing no guilt nor shame for his actions made in the name of preserving the Imperium, Gabriel would continue to fight in his name, no matter the slights or insults made against his reputation. The chapter masters began to vote their verdict as they held their blades aloft or cast them to the ground. Rendering the final verdict, Lord Commander Dante cemented the decision of the Assembly. Finding Gabriel Seth guilty, he would be stripped of his title and the Flesh Tearers disbanded and their numbers subsumed into the ranks of the other Successor Chapters. Yet one soul would enter the chamber and respond to such a judgment: Astarath the Grim. Standing shoulder to shoulder with Gabriel Seth, Astarath claimed himself to be the final arbiter of the judgment of the curse. Lord Commander Dante, though welcoming of his High Chaplain's wisdom, could not allow him to defy the will of his superior officers. Stating his actions not as defiance but redemption, not just for the Flesh Tearers, but for all the sons of Sanguinius. Leveling his axe at each one of the chapter masters, Astarath proclaimed himself as the chosen redeemer of the great angel, and none shall challenge his authority on the matter. They were the Emperor's avenging angels, and they showed no mercy and no forgiveness. Bred only to kill and be killed, each member of the council embodied an aspect of the Blood's character. Malachim championed their redemption, Centican served as their protector, and Lord Commander Dante acted as their conscience. But Seth was the blade of Sanguinius, and his Flesh Tearers the teeth of its edge. A blade which the sons of Sanguinius would sorely need, should they survive the trials soon to befall them. Though found guilty of their sins, Gabriel Seth and the Flesh Tearers would remain as the mongrel killers of the Ninth. Called to fight alongside their brethren during 999.M41, the Flesh Tearers would prove their worth to the successors of Sanguinius during the calamitous Devastation of Baal. Lord Commander Dante, calling for every Blood Angel successor, required every able-bodied Astartes to combat the forces of both Chaos and the Tyranid menace. Loathing his primogenitor's haughty and arrogant nature, the contempt with which his peers saw his chapter roused only bitterness within Gabriel's hearts. Yet they were the blade of Sanguinius, and they would not be found wanting for battle. Meeting with the Conclave of Blood upon Baal, Seth refused the requests of Dante to provide tithes of initiates to reinforce the forces of the Blood Angels, as the chapter sought to drastically replenish their numbers through the ancient lost arts of replique cloning. Chief Apothecary Casus, through the manipulations of the spider, Fabius Bile, had begun to create blood fiends. Under the ministrations of the disguised Emperor's Children Chief Apothecary, the mutant Astartes were utterly consumed by the Red Thirst. Breaking free of their confinement to the laboratorium, the blood fiends allowed for the theft of a vial of Sanguinius's blood from the Red Grail by the Clone Lord. Defending the golden sarcophagus of Sanguinius from the rampage of the mutants, Seth would, alongside his cousin chapters, cleanse the planet of the corrupted parodies of the Blood Angels. Saving Seth's life during the battle, Lord Commander Dante realized the folly of his hubris and began to understand the bonds that tied his own chapter to that of the Flesh Tearers and their mutual plight to stave off their curse. Relenting in their stubborn defiance, the Flesh Tearers unanimously agreed to tithe their neophytes to rebuild the Blood Angels, to prepare for the impending assault of Baal. Installed as among the most senior commanders of the Devastation of Baal, Gabriel Seth once again fought alongside Dante and the Blood Angels to preserve their ancestral chapter homeworld. Commanding the defense of the Arx Angelicum with the wounding of Dante, Seth fought with unrelenting fury until the reinforcements of the Avenging Sun, Rebute Gilliman, and his Indomitus Crusade arrived. Driving back High Fleet Leviathan, the Lord of Ultramar observed the near annihilation of every chapter of the Great Angel. Reinforcing each chapter with Primaris Space Marines, Gilliman's offer of Astartes regardless did not meet the standards of the Guardian of Rage. Wary of such warriors diluting the purpose and nature of his chapter, Gabriel Seth abhorred the cultural trappings of the Ultramarines, transforming the Flesh Tearers into another legacy of the Avenging Sun. Convicted in his belief that their lack of inner turmoil will cause them to lose their purpose, to be a true son of Sanguinius is to wrestle between nobility and savagery. For should the Flesh Tearers lose sight of their duty as the necessary yet dour killers of the Astartes, the hard-won redemption and glimmer of hope nurtured by Gabriel Seth shall have been in vain.
You stand as an insult to everything we have suffered.
Gabriel Seth's voice was churned gravel. He addressed the Primaris Space Marine before him in the Reclusium, the deep crimson and black of his armor newly painted, unmarked by war.
You do not deserve the symbol you now bear on your pauldron.
Seth stepped to within striking distance of the other Space Marine.
The ash and blood of my brothers has no place on your armor, Captain.
Anger twisted the captain's face as he struggled to make sense of Seth's tirade. I am Brother Captain Toivo, and I stand before you as Lord Guilliman.
Guilliman?
Seth snarled.
His name will buy you no brotherhood here.
Then what of Dante? He wills this also. He is by blood and honor your—
Dante can choke on the blood of Baal. This is my house. These are my warriors.
Seth gestured around him.
It is their blood, their lives you would have me entrust to you.
Toivo made to speak and faltered, caught off guard by the hatred Seth demonstrated for the Primarch and the Lord of the Blood Angels.
You believe Guilliman's slight has gone unnoticed? That there are none learned enough here among my butchers?
Seth grinned.
Toivo, old Terran, from the northern continents meaning hope. Guilliman has sent you and your blood here to heal us.
Seth closed, his head just below Toivo's jaw.
Yet your blood weakens us.
Toivo clenched his fists. I am no happier about this than you. I would have gladly remained one of the unnumbered, a son of Sanguinius clad in angel red.
Then leave here.
Seth dug his forehead into Toivo's chest and drove him back with a sharp headbutt. Would that I could. Toivo sucked in a breath and felt the rising heat of his blood lessen. With respect, Chapter Master, test me no further. Seth shook his head.
You are here to be tested.
Confusion creased Toivo's brow.
If you are to stand with us, you will fight me.
You would have me fight you? Seth nodded.
As the blood wills it.
This is madness. I will not.
Then you will die a coward.
As Seth spoke, Chaplain Apollos emerged from one of the alcoves bordering the chamber and leveled a plasma pistol at Toivo.
Heresy!
Toivo shot a glance over his shoulder to the doors.
They will not open,
said Seth. Lord Dante and Lord Guilliman will have your head.
They are not here, imposter. I am, and I will kill you. Damn you.
Toivo bared his teeth.
You think that anger, Space Marine? You think this betrayal?
For the briefest of moments, the ire faded from Seth's features.
We are damned by our own genes. The very blood in our veins will rob us of all that we are, as quick as a blade in the darkness.
Toivo looked at Apollos. The chaplain's intent was unreadable under the cold slab of his skull helm.
Only the dead and the damned find refuge with the chaplain. Which shall we number you among?
Very well. Toivo widened his stance and edged to Seth's left. Your reputation precedes you, Chapter Master. I have heard tales of the unstoppable butcher, driven by rage and fury. A broken angel whose fist can crush ceramite. But here, now, you look small. Toivo kept moving, sizing up Seth. We Primaris were made to be better. Better than you. There is no arrogance in that. By the will of the Emperor and the labors of Lord Guilliman, I am simply stronger than you. Seth locked eyes with Toivo, eyes that had seen untold acts of violence and bloodletting, and grinned.
Are you?
Seth saw it then, a momentary flash of Toivo's face. Weakness. Doubt. Seth roared. He shot forward, smashing a fist into Toivo's nose. Bone broke. He struck him again, a hammer blow across the blade of his jaw. Toivo tried for space, but Seth grabbed his pauldron, fixing him in place as he delivered a second and third hammer blow with his fist. Toivo threw an uppercut into Seth's ribs.
Is that it?
Seth maintained his hold.
Is that it?
He continued to hammer him. Seth kept punching until his blows robbed Toivo of consciousness. Seth felt his opponent go limp. He hit him once more and then dropped him to the ground. Toivo went down hard, his head bouncing off the flagstones.
Strength and fury are not enough. Intent is everything.
Seth snarled and brought his knee up. "Gabriel!" Apollos shouted. "Enough!" Seth stamped down, cracking the flagstones a breath of Toivo's head. Toivo groaned, consciousness slowly returning.
To fight as one of us is to strike first and keep on striking until only blood remains.
Seth glared down at Toivo. The Primaris Space Marine's face was a lumpen mess, his features barely recognizable. Seth growled through gritted teeth and knelt, calmer, next to Toivo. He lowered his voice to a whisper. "Did it ever occur to you that if you are stronger, if indeed you are one of us and more, perhaps when the darkness comes for you, it will come for us all? That the curse will be stronger too? In the dark of your soul, how long before the beast calls and your veins and armor turn black?" Toivo made to speak, his eyes glazed with a mix of rage and sorrow, but he could force no words through the ruin of his jaw. Seth smiled. "Now you look like one of us, brother." The chapter master stood and made for the exit. "Apollos, help our new captain to his feet." This has been a tale of the Great Imperium of Man, read by the Remembrancer. Gabriel Seth's duty as the gore-stained harbinger of rage is a thankless and unremitting task. His chapter's most valiant and glorious deeds submerged in oceans of blood shed by their own hands. Their bitterness and spite is understandable given perspective. Do not fall victim to the barbs of others who remain ignorant of the burdens you carry, for in grim silence are the heaviest burdens carried. Just know that a rare few have the strength to aid in your encumbrance. And should you find such comrades, never take for granted the solace they provide.